And hopefully Nidhi will be on and she really help us engage. Hey, everybody. It is Dr. Tori J. I am coming to you live. Look, I'm in Atlanta and I'm excited. I am your founder and CEO of the Fatherless Generation Foundation. And after our last conversation or our last series, where we were digging into some stuff about mama's boys and living with one and living with an emasculating woman, it came down to this place of intimacy and how promiscuity might be impacting how we connect with one another. And so tonight we want to have a discussion about promiscuity. Is it a threat to intimacy? And what that looks like for us as fatherless sons and daughters. How do we engage with each other sexually when we are fatherless and we have guards and we have barriers? As my husband is already jumping on here, if you are on, please share this conversation. I have a sex therapist in the room. And I know y'all wasn't ready because even when I posted last week, we're going to come next week with a sex therapist, Ayanay. They were like, what? We need to have conversations with people who are expertise and they have an expert in their field and not just any kind of therapist. We want to have the right conversation with the right people. And that's why I brought her on to have this conversation. So share, because it's going to get deep. I'm going there tonight because we need to know. And if you are watching this in replay, please put replay in the box for me. I want to have my phone, Ayanay, because I need to see who's checking in and chiming in. I must have put my phone. Okay, I'll do this over here with my iPad. But tonight, I am going to introduce to most of you someone who's new. I have, look, she and her, Dr. Ayanay Ferguson. And I have her on. I know Ayanay from our MAPS community, our marriage and parenting community. And we had a talk, about 3-4 months ago about some of the sexual stuff that I had been dealing with. Ayanay, one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on was, and I'm transparent on here. They don't know everything, but they know enough to know I'm going to break it all down. They wanted to talk about sex after the conversation of entanglement with Will and David. And I couldn't go there for them. And then after I got off, because I was crying, and after I got off the live, I had a breakdown. And I had a breakdown learning that I had buried the sexuality of myself in my marriage because there were things that were happening and challenges that were going on, and I couldn't have it with them. And then we brought on another therapist we were talking about different things, and I can tell you that he broke some stuff down, but I said, I need a sex therapist in the room. Because not only do we bury that sometimes when we're having challenges, a lot of times we will bury the intimate part where people want to connect with us, want to get to know us. And then we, as fatherless individuals, we have sex with people we're not intimate. We are highly sexual, rarely intimate. And that's a quote I use often. We want to know why, Ayanay. And that's what we want to know. We want to know, why are we like this? And how do we stop it is the other conversation that I want us to have. Why are we highly sexual, lack intimacy, and we can't stop it? And then we end up in the fatherless generation. We have children with people that we didn't want to have children with. So Ayanay, do me a favor and Dr. Ayanay, do me a favor and introduce yourself to my community. Tell them your background, where you're from, and all of that.
Okay. So I'm Ayanay Ferguson. I'm a licensed psychologist in the state of Georgia. I've worked with the military and veterans, military and veteran population for most of my career. I started out working with children and sort of moved to older adolescents, young military folks, and on into veterans. And I've been studying to get certified as a sex therapist. God brought me to this place. He told me, look, you need to be, and this has been the last 2 or 3 years. You have something that you need to bring out. I really believe that the church and our families have put a lot of shame in us around sex, and God is telling me, well, that's not how we're supposed to be. And so here I am, trying to break this.
You're gonna jump that hard, that quick, Ayanay?
Yes. It is my calling to break the shame cycle with regard to sex. And so that's how I got to where I am now, doing sex therapy and intimacy coaching, really trying to help women, middle-aged women. That's me. I'm 47. Really want to help us have phenomenal sex lives that include intimacy.
Okay, I don't think you watched it. I'm pretty sure you didn't watch the last live I did.
I did
That's
not.
what I said. We deserve, as men and women, we deserve to have amazing sex.
Yes.
We deserve to do it, and we deserve to do it with someone who we know loves and cares about us and is connected to us, as well as if it doesn't go well, they'll be good co-parents with us. And unfortunately, our trauma keeps us from that.
Yes.
I want to get started with this because you already tapped on. She said, I'm in the shame cycle, number one. I am learning that a lot of women, especially when you grow up in church, are ashamed of sex, which is odd to me. I would say I was ashamed in my single life, but my married life, I was like, bring that on.
Right. Well, and that's what you're taught. You know, you're taught that you're supposed to save yourself for your marriage. But so you actually said bring it on in your marriage, but so many women get into marriage and they're like, well, I don't really know that sex is supposed to be pleasurable for me because it was a gift I was saving for my husband. And even if you didn't save it, especially if you didn't save it for your husband, then you still have guilt and shame about that. And so you don't want him to know how much you know because you've been taught that you weren't supposed to, have done that. When in fact, God made sex pleasurable, right? That is, it's pleasurable for a reason because he made it that way.
Yeah.
We didn't just decide something that's not pleasurable is going to be pleasurable. It was designed to bring us pleasure. It's also designed for procreation and other things, but
pleasure.
Pleasure.
Yeah.
And that's the part we don't talk about because and it's the part we seek. So we're constantly trying to find the pleasurable part of sex, but we've compounded this guilt and shame on it to where we're just doing it now, trying to find the pleasure, and we can't find the pleasure because we don't know what it's supposed to be about.
So let me ask you this, because a lot of stuff that I was reading, preparing, because I was thinking I was going to have to do this myself tonight, and I'm so grateful you text. There's challenges. Are sex and intimacy the same thing, or are they different?
They're different things.
Mm-hmm.
They can be superimposed on each other, but you can have intimacy without sex and sex without intimacy, right? But if we want to find the most pleasure out of both, we want to see them come together. And so there's nothing inherently wrong with having sex without intimacy. It could be solely for pleasure, but you have to know yourself. Like, you can't be trying to heal yourself through sex.
Pause. See, there it is. That's what Jada said. That's what we deduced that to. Mm-hmm. That I saw a few people put on their Facebook page that they were getting under anybody and anything in order to heal themselves. That's what we do as fatherless individuals when we are in the trauma cycle. How do we recognize that, Ayanay? Dr. Ayanay, how do we recognize that?
Part of it is just understanding why am I having sex right now? So sometimes we'll say, oh, I just want to get mine, right? That's what we're thinking. I just want to be pleasured. And there are times when sex is just about being pleasured. But if that's the only thing that you're focused on, or if you're focused on trying to numb or stop thinking about something, or sex is sort of an escape from something, that's when you know sex shouldn't be an escape from, it should be an escape to.
And what are we supposed to escape to?
To pleasure and intimacy.
Wow.
Right? So if, like I said, there's nothing wrong with having sex for pleasure. If you're not, like I said, if you're not using it to heal yourself, if you're healed, if you're 100% whole, and you really know this is really just about pleasure, then there's nothing wrong with having sex for pleasure and not having intimate connections for men and women. We think that men only have sex for pleasure, but that's not true. It's not.
Okay, why are men having sex? I got a couple of questions on what you just said.
Men have sex because they do want to feel connected to people. They want to feel connected to the person they're having sex with.
And that is intimacy, people.
And that is intimacy.
Because I was going to say, let's define intimacy. Intimacy is this heart connection, this heart, and it doesn't even have to be always in a relationship, but it's a heart connection with someone that you are with. Whether like you can have sex without you can have intimacy without sex and sex without intimacy, right? But that intimacy piece is the connection that you feel. And it's a deep connection most of the times. And deep connection means that you are whole. The person knows who you are. You've allowed them in. See, that's the key. Allowing
it's vulnerability.
Vulnerable message.
Right. So if you can't be vulnerable with sex is the most vulnerable position you can put yourself in.
Yes.
So if you can't be emotionally vulnerable with the person you're having sex with, when you have put yourself in this you're putting your life literally in the hands of another person when you have sex with them. And so if you can't be vulnerable emotionally with them, then why are you having sex with them? Now you can, what'd you say?
You're having sex to heal.
Yes. And sex doesn't heal anything. Because what I would say to Jada when she said that, my question would be, how is that working for you?
It wasn't. Because the little boy is broken. I'm going to call him a little boy because that's what he is. He was broken, taken talking about the situation with them. Mm-hmm. So you broke him in order to heal you?
And she's still broke. I would say she's still broken too, because she was unable to speak vulnerably and with truth in that situation. She kind of talked around it without being able to be, and there was some, and I could see that her husband Will Smith was also stricken by that situation. No matter what their agreement was, he still, you could hear it in his voice when he was asking her questions
and see it in his face.
Yeah. And hear it in his words. Like he just, so that whole process of trying to heal herself was for nothing, because it healed no one and broke several people in the process.
Yes. And that's what we do when we have sex and without intimacy in the place of so-called healing ourselves. We actually break other people in the process. One of the things I recognize about Jada is she's a fatherless daughter. Mm-hmm. And so she's still trying to heal her father wounds through these entanglements, these situations. Mm-hmm. Even with her husband, where she's saying to him, I told you, I just wanted to make sure that you was with me, or whatever that phrase. She made a phrase at the end, that you could love me through anything. Why are we looking for people to love us through anything? Which meant to me that she was really testing and doing a lot of different things in their relationship to prove that she's unlovable. Do you see that in your work with sex and, with people dealing with sex, that women are having sex and being promiscuous, but in a way it's proving that they're not lovable?
Yes. I mean, women who have trauma histories, and the trauma doesn't have to be sexual abuse. The trauma doesn't have to be you were in Iraq. I mean, trauma history can be being without a father, can be having a neglectful mother. Trauma could come from anywhere. Yeah. And so a woman with a trauma history you will see that that desire to feel a void and to numb the trauma at the same time. So you're remembering the trauma, which puts this sort of void in your life, and you're trying to fill that void and forget the trauma. But the void is the trauma. So you're basically impacting the trauma and bringing it up every time you do something to fill that void. So every time you have sex with someone who you're not intimate with, who you've not been vulnerable with, trying to avoid, you are bringing that trauma back up for yourself.
Okay, hold on. I already got Annalise on here talking about, wow, deep. There were you. You just said, okay. You're saying to me that anytime I am promiscuous, in a sense, without the intimacy, without being vulnerable with this person, without really knowing who they are and they don't know who I am bringing up past trauma.
Yes.
Do people know this when they come into your office and you share this with them? Are they minds just as mine right now?
Yeah, it's not common knowledge. You know, the hallmark of PTSD, so of a diagnosis of PTSD, is avoidance. So if you're actively trying to avoid the trauma, typically you're remembering it as you're actively trying to forget it, right? So if you're drinking, or if you're using drugs, or if you're having sex, they all fall in this. They're all the same thing. And sometimes you could do all three, trying to forget that trauma. You're trying to forget. It's like me telling you, stop looking at my glasses, right? So you're trying to forget that I have on glasses and I'm touching them. And now all you can think about is the glasses, because you're trying to forget that I told you to stop thinking about my glasses.
Wow. See, this is why I knew I needed to have this conversation. And I was like, I need these people to have this. I need sex therapists. I knew that I did. Oh, I hope you guys heard this. I see y'all jumping on and jumping off. I know Paul has shared this. I know Unmarried Father has shared this. Because let's talk about, I know that goes for men as well, but I know men respond differently. So what does the manifestation of this look like for men? We just talked about women. What does it look like for men who have a trauma history, as you call it?
So men typically fall toward the substances more so than sex. But if sex is part of their trauma, or if part of their trauma is a neglectful mother, then they're going to try and find a mom who's not neglectful, someone who's going to always be there, who's going to listen to them and affirm them. And so it's the same thing with women and the absent father figure. You learn how to be in a relationship with a person of the opposite sex, if that's your choice. So if you're if you are gay or lesbian and you're in a relationship with someone of the same sex, you still learn how to be in that relationship based on the relationships with your parents. And so for men for heterosexual men who have mothers who are neglectful, they're going to try and find either someone exactly like their mother. So that's where you end up in a relationship where the woman is very dominant, or very, domineering, or they're going to look for someone who is going to pacify them.
Okay. And
so if yes.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. No, so the reaction is different. Women are more, when women are missing their fathers, they're looking for someone to take care of them. I mean, now, even I grew up with my father and he was a phenomenal man. I still want a man to take care of me. But I think that when the father is absent, you're looking for someone to fulfill that role in a different way, right? So you're looking for someone who's going to love you unconditionally. And the truth is, the only thing that's going to love you unconditionally is a dog. No one loves unconditionally. There are always conditions on love. Always.
Look, Dr. Ayanay, you just set some people free tonight. I just had this conversation with myself 2 days ago. Like, is that a thing? Is unconditional love really a thing? My aunt always used to say, no, it's not. She said, because if my husband gets on drugs, I'm done. If he cheats on me, I'm done. If he, she had these, I think it was 3 or 4 things. And she was like, so those are conditions. So it's not unconditional. And they were one of the blueprints for what I would look for when I got married. And I can tell you that we are taught these things in church, from movies, in books we read. Men are taught the same thing. So I could easily say, well, women, we fantasize about certain things, but men do too. And when it comes to a father and a mother, I believe when we're fatherless, we have a fantasy of what providing and taking care of me looks like. But when you have a father in the home, yes, you still want a man to take care of you, but you know what that looks like.
Yes.
So this is like, when I tell you, got an amen and thank you over here from Tina. Tina is like, yes, thank you. I am right now, my head is just like doing this because I wasn't expecting some of this conversation. Like the attraction deprivation that we have, looking for the other, looking for our parent in our new relationships and trying to heal it through that. That's one thing. But looking at it sexually is another thing. And it's a different window and a different lens to look through. And one of the reasons I want to focus on this question I'm about to ask now is because I'm the Fatherless Generation Foundation. And the women and men who I am, like, who will watch this and some of the platforms and groups that this is being shared to, they now have children with people that they didn't know, Dr. Ayanay. And now they can't parent. And now they're either alienated from their children or they're having a fight and they can only see their children here and there. And I want to say that so much of it goes back to, we'll call it sex without intimacy, the second step, technically, as we're backing into it. But the first one is neglect, fatherlessness, lack of love, lack of self and understanding of who you are, and the trauma history. Like, it's all, like, that's the first stage. How do we overcome this challenge that we have as individuals who have a trauma history, especially surrounding our parents, our dads, and especially? How do we overcome this?
So, I mean, if you have a child, one of the best things you can do for your child is not pass on that trauma. And if your child is by a man you don't know or by a woman you don't know, that doesn't mean you can't have a co-parenting relationship, right? Separate issue. There are ways to work that part out, but if you're unable to have a co-parenting relationship, you want to make sure that what you're modeling for your child is healthy relationship. You don't have to be in a marriage to model healthy relationship. How do you navigate yourself with a potential partner? What is your child seeing? Your child shouldn't be calling every man that comes to the house uncle so and so, because that's not appropriate for them to one, know everybody you're sleeping with, and two, to call them uncle if they're going to be a potential partner,
right?
Or whatever. The other thing is if you keep that in mind, if you kind of keep in mind, what am I passing on to my child? What do I want my child to know about pleasure and sex? What do I want my child to know about relationships? Then that can guide how you function for yourself. Some trauma has to be healed through therapy.
Say that again, Dr. Ayanay, to the men in the back of the room.
Yes. For those who are working through it on their own, it's time to take a step back and look at what is it that you've tried to do. Has it worked for you more than temporarily? So during sex, yes, you can forget about whatever, while you're drunk or high, you can forget about whatever in that moment, but all of that wears off. Sex doesn't last forever. I mean, The song says make it last forever, but trust me, it doesn't. Even the best sex doesn't last forever. So once it's over, where are you? What are you in at that point?
Yeah.
Focus on not staying in that space without having to have sex to get out of that space, or without having to have drugs or alcohol. You have to, I mean, for some people, it becomes so linked. You know, their relief, they are, sometimes you will mistake relief for pleasure. And that relief is temporary. You know, if you have a headache and you take an aspirin, if you don't deal with the underlying issue of like, I'm actually hungry and I need to feed myself, if you don't take care of that, you're still going to have a headache when that aspirin wears off.
Yes.
And so you have to feed yourself with things that are going to heal you first. And that might be reconnecting with who you are. You have to be vulnerable with yourself first. You know, connecting with and recognizing what was traumatic for you. What was it? Was really not having a father? Like, that could be it. But did something else occur? Was it the way your mother talked about your father?
Yeah. What was the compounding trauma? Yeah.
Right. Was it was it that you had no men in your life? Because a lot of fatherless children still have grandparents and uncles and real uncles in their lives.
Yeah.
So can you think about what relationship you look to as a model?
I got you. So hold on. There's some gentlemen chiming in.
Okay.
The unmarried father, which is a group, he said, yes, this explains why sex is viewed so loosely. You were talking about something particular back then. I won't even get into that because it was so good. And I don't want to mess it up by paraphrasing it. Paul said the problem of a generation raised by a generation that created divorce, family separation to be normal. Boys being raised not having sex completely explained. There's more to it than just wearing a condom. Yeah.
That is what we do. We hand our 13-year-old boys a bag of condoms and say, don't bring a baby home.
And then when they do, we don't go ahead.
We just take, I mean, usually we just bring them on, we fuss at them or whatever, but we don't kick them. I mean, not that we want to kick out a 14-year-old or 15-year-old with a child, but we just move on. We just keep it going. And we perpetuate the same things over and over and over again. We don't talk to any of our children about what sex really is. We talk about STD prevention. We talk about abstinence. We talk about saving yourself for marriage. We don't talk about what sex is, that God designed sex for pleasure, and procreation. Now, teenagers have the drive toward that pleasure. Why would we not talk about that? When you tell somebody don't touch the shiny object, and your drive is to touch the shiny object, that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna touch the object. So it's better to talk about what sex is. Yes, it's pleasurable. Is it something that you need to do? What else comes along with sex? What are we talking about in terms of relationship?
Yeah.
Are we demonstrating and being an example of what a good relationship is? Are we talking about, even if you're, like I said, you don't have to be in a relationship. You don't have to be married to demonstrate what good dating practices are, or what good, what that is. It's really about talking about it as well, and being open and vulnerable with your children.
And that's where it starts. We were once children wanting our parents to be open and vulnerable and sharing it with us. But then when we had children, we were like, oh no, we're gonna do the same thing over and over again. Paul also said, this is great for the unmarried followers to hear. We hear a lot of our fathers not knowing the importance and the impact of sex, because The unmarried father is a group where they clearly had children out of wedlock, and now they're being penalized for it. And so they have to go through court a different way than a divorced dad. They have to work through it differently. And there's this stigma attached to it. And Paul and Ryan really work to help dads understand their position. But one of the things I feel like they need to hear, and I believe women need to hear something that you said earlier. Men want a connection. They desire a connection. So often we hear this phrase that men are dogs. They just go around and having sex, and they're throwing their seed here and there. Men are they're doing the same thing that we're doing as women, but we stigmatize men. And we are now in this generation celebrating women. And I can understand, because both are detrimental either way that it goes.
Right. And we're not just stigmatizing the men, we are now penalizing them for doing what they, what we've been taught to do, how we've been taught to view sex. And then we're penalizing them when they have a child out of wedlock by withholding the child from them. And that's not healthy for anybody. That's not healthy it's not healthy for the mom. Honey, you need a break. Send that child to their dad for the week, every other week or whatever the arrangement is, whatever it can be worked out. You need a break too. And I don't understand, unless the father is genuinely unfit to care for a child. I don't understand why you would keep a child from their father or from their mother. Again, unless they are truly unfit to parent, there is no reason why. I mean, even unfit parents get supervised visitation. Children
We didn't rehearse this. I didn't know her position, but I know good people.
Children need, they crave that parental guidance and that relationship. And if they don't get it as children, they're going to end up in the same place, you're in as an adult. They're not going to know what it's like to be in relationship with people.
Oh God, that's a message in itself, because the issue is relationship. That's why the picture, I was going to get your picture off social media. I said, no, I'm going to use this heart with a handcuff around it that I found, because we're having real challenges with our hearts. And we have built barriers, and we've built fortresses, and we've literally built prisons around our hearts, based on the relationships we've seen our parents have, based on the confirmations that we've had as young adults and as adults concerning relationships that are all traumatic. Sometimes we get a good one in there and it's like, whoo, but we'll ruin that, which then we turn it into trauma.
Right.
And when you just said, it's all about the relationship, that's what intimacy is. It's a relationship. It's an engagement. It's a deep vulnerability concerning another person that you say you love and care about. And I know when you were talking about women who withhold, and men sometimes withhold as well, I know that story. But I've heard the excuse, Dr. Ayanay, well, I don't know him and he's not, but you slept with him.
Right.
And so
you opened your entire body to that person.
Soul, spirit, not just legs, but all of you.
Everything.
And now they want to be a parent, and your excuse is, well, I don't know them that well. And so they shouldn't be able to see the child, or I want sole custody. I'm thinking, that's crazy. And now you're exposing yourself, but also now I get to look at you and say, you had sex with a man you don't know. And now you want to penalize him because you don't know him? Well, how about you now start the relationship you should have started before you had sex with him? Now's the time, so that the child can see you working through it, growing through it, and overcoming the barriers that were put there in the first place.
Yeah. And a lot of that is out of fear. So not to just heap on the moms who are like, that's out of fear. If you don't know someone, you fear losing your child, right? So you don't know if the father's going to take that child and run off to another country. Like, you start to build these thoughts in your head. You put yourself in a situation where you are in the worst case scenario, when it's like, really, how likely is that to happen? What statistically, how many parents have parenting agreements with the other parent, and they just run off with the child, and you never see like that? We kind of, because we haven't seen what healthy co-parenting looks like, we build up this framework based on our trauma, centered in our own trauma.
Right, because that's why you think that's going to happen, because there's some level of trauma that's creating that psychosis. There's something happening that's creating that for you. Let's go here. Paul said, healthy relationships can't be started or carried out if we don't know what it looks like. Chaos is what everyone knows and sees. Wow, Paul, that's real. That's very real. How do we get out of the cycle of chaos and not knowing what it looks like?
Therapy. I mean, that's one way. I also say, you have to think about, I mean, there no in a complete vacuum of relationshiplessness, right? So there has to be a relationship, even if it's fictional, even if it was, someone on TV.
She's paused. She's paused. Ayanay, are you there? No. This is getting good. It's been good, but okay, hold on. Hopefully she's gonna come back here in a moment, because she's paused here for some reason. I'm gonna pull her down. Okay, you guys need to tell me, how are you enjoying this conversation? I'll bring her back as soon as she's unfrozen. But this thing, if you are just watching this and you're just tuning in, I need you to go back and watch the replay, because there was some stuff said in the beginning that was absolutely phenomenal. It was amazing. Hold on. I don't want to. Okay, she's coming. She got disconnected and she's coming. She's going to come back. Everything from sex is intended to be amazing, but it has to be incorporated with intimacy. And if you have what Dr. Ayanay calls a trauma history, it is a struggle for you to get there. It is a struggle for you to get to that place, because you have this trauma history. We've got to get fatherless sons and daughters healed enough where they can experience what true intimacy and sex, what really making love means. That's what I was just kind of recapping and telling people.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm having internet issues.
It happens. No, it happens. And I was telling people, if you are just tuning in, you need to go back to the beginning. And Paul said, yes, great rewatch from the beginning. We have to understand that this is all like it. I can't say it enough. And I said it before, and I'm going to say it now before we go back into what you were saying. We have to get to a place where we enjoy sex, not for a moment, not to cover up, not to fill a void, but for its true intended purpose. That way, when we procreate out of it and out of love, our children will only feel that.
Yes.
That's what the bottom line is. So I'm sorry. I hope you remember your thought that you were having a moment ago before you got kicked off.
Yes. No, I was just saying that, if you just bury your head in the sand and you say, well, I have no relationships to look at, so I can't really emulate good relationships. You can take bits and pieces from any relationship you've seen, whether it was the pastor and first lady at your church. Yes, they probably told you some things that traumatized you, but there were probably some good things about their relationship that you can look at. Or if it was a television relationship, think about what would a good relationship be. That's, you have to decide for yourself. And that's going to be different for different people. So it could be a relationship where I can talk to the person, or it's a relationship where I can rely on the person, and I'm an introvert, so I just want them to go to the other room for a while. It could be anything. Like, you have to think about, what is it that would make me feel comfortable enough to be vulnerable, to tell this person my inner thoughts, how I feel about them. That's something we don't do. We don't tell our partners how we feel about them. So if you're having sex with someone and you're receiving pleasure, if they never tell you it's good to them too, or that they enjoy pleasuring you, or that you're beautiful, or if they, I mean, what are you getting out of it? There's some, and you have to give that as well as receive it. And so if you can't say something nice about the person you're having sex with, and you may hear me say this more than once, why are you having sex with them? These are all questions you should be asking yourself when you're going into a sexual relationship with someone. And having sex one time is a sexual relationship. You have opened yourself up to every health issue that they have, every soul they've ever snatched. You've opened yourself up to all of that when you have sex with someone. So you're entering into a relationship, even if it's only one time, because you're going to carry a piece of that in your soul into the next, into every other sexual partner you have.
Oh, did you say that?
I did.
You did. Okay. So she went to Soul Ties. That's a church term, right?
And I don't necessarily use that term.
No, and I was just about to change it and say, I know it's a church called Soul Ties. You just said you carry a piece of that in your soul everywhere you go, is what you said.
Yes.
See, that gives me a different visual. And that's why I wanted for the churchy folks on here. I wanted to connect the dots for them, Dr. Ayanay.
Yes.
You carry, can you ever drop it off?
You can drop it off. I mean, everything that you've done in the past doesn't have to go into the future with you. If you heal yourself. So your soul, if your soul is not whole, it's going to continue to fill itself with the things that you've tried to fill it with, right? So if you had sex with him last week and you weren't whole, you're going to carry that with you because that little piece is trying to sew it up.
And trying to fill a void.
Trying to fill that void. It's not going to. It's not big enough.
So what I also hear you talking about is intentions. When I'm having sex, like, what are my intentions? What's my ulterior motive? So I gotta ask my people on here, like, what's your ulterior motive? We're in a new season and clearly in a hoe world. We can be hoes and it's good, but is it? I can't answer that. I mean, that's a person's choice, but I'm like,
right. As
Dr. Phil would say, 20 years from now, I want you to ask yourself, how is that working for you? Male and female. Because if I'm a hoe now, and I'm using that term and I mean it, and then I carry a bit of someone's soul with me because my intentions were to fill a void of some sort. That's not going to work for me later on, Dr. Ayanay.
It's not.
That's going to be traumatizing later on as I go down the line.
And when you get to the point where you find someone who you feel like you want to be vulnerable and intimate with, and then you're trying to silence those pieces in your soul, that's when they get the loudest. And so vulnerability means purging those pieces. It means dealing with each and every one of those pieces and filling the void with healthy, like, processing. You have to process the trauma. You have to think about it, talk about it. I often say working on trauma is like cleaning out a garage, right? If you've ever, or a storage unit, if you've ever, there's just stuff in there everywhere. You can't find anything. You're tripping over stuff. You're remembering things half, I think that's there. You're having these weird, and then to process the trauma, you got to pull everything out and deal with it. You got to touch everything. You got to decide what's going in the trash, what's going to Goodwill, what's getting put back in. You got to organize it and put it back in there. Because what happens is you can't really throw it away. We don't have a magic wand to get rid of all the bad memories, but you processed it and organized it to where it's just a bad memory. It's not something that drags you to feeling like the child who was sitting on the front porch waiting for your dad to show up and they didn't show up. When you feel like that, you do bad things.
Yeah.
Drink, smoke, have sex.
Have sex with random people. Yeah.
Right. And that's the part that you have to look at. Like, what is the actual trauma? Can I deal with it? How do I process this? You know, you need to get through that part of it so that when you get to the point where you've met the person who's going to be a good person, or you've decided that I don't really need another person. I'm a relationship person. I think I need to be in a relationship, but there are some people who don't feel like they need to be in a romantic relationship. You're still going to have relationships. But when you get to that point where you're a whole person, your soul is whole, you've dealt with it, you've thought about it, you've written it down, you've said it, then you don't have to take it with you into the next relationship. You can tell them, this was the trauma I dealt with. When you can say, this is the trauma I dealt with, or this is the thing that took me through some stuff, when you can say that, that's when you're healed.
Yeah.
And when it's still shrouded in shame, when it's still like, oh, I don't want anybody to know that about me. That's when, it's still not, you're not healed. You're still trying to push it down, and pushing it down, stuff in that garage with more stuff is not going to make it usable.
Not going to organize it or clean it.
Right. It's not going to make it usable. It's unusable.
I just had a conversation with a gentleman, and he was, marriage was a bad situation. It broke him. It challenged him in ways that he literally said, I'm not looking for love. I have sex and I move on, and I'm not looking for love. I know women do the same thing. We're still hurt by the divorce. We're still broken. I hear a lot of men who come to me concerning their children, especially in our shared parenting movements and the father's rights movement, where they have these challenges. How do we help, especially fathers? I'm going to speak to fathers because I know they're having this. I think women, we bounce back differently. And I think we sometimes know therapy. Men, you guys puff out your chest and you feel like therapy is a punk way out, or whatever that word is that you want to use. It's not the proper way. How do we help men? And I see, Paul, I see your question. I'm going to ask it in a moment before we get off of here. How do we help men navigate that hurt and pain where it's not causing them PTSD and all these other things that's keeping them from the love that they really desire, but they have to stuff the desire for love down because they don't want to be hurt again?
Yeah, I think if therapy is not the direction you want to go in, you can think of either think of a therapist as a coach or go into a coaching relationship. Yeah. Like, if you're trying to improve your swing on the golf course, you have no problem dropping $200 to go see this specialist at the golf. I don't know. I don't play golf, so I don't know. But you can go and you can be coached to get this better swing on the golf course. It's the same exact process. Someone is coaching you on how to move through that trauma. Because the saying is hurt people, right? So if you're coming out of a divorce, the only thing you can think about is hurting the other person, like either by withholding the child or withholding support for the child or whatever it is you're trying to do to hurt the other person. All you're doing is hurting you're just proving that you're hurt. You're hurting your child and you're hurting yourself, because you're not allowing yourself to heal. So why not go get a coach to coach you through the healing process?
Yeah. I tell them all the time, they need a therapist and a coach. I tell them that all the time. We even recently, we opened the men's room, and the therapist, there's 3 therapists and a coach in that room, and they're all men. And then we'll have the ladies' room, and the ladies will have a coach and therapist, and they will be all female, because my goal is to help people heal. There's no fee for that. As much as people say, Tori, you need to charge. Healing shouldn't come at a price right now. I'm just like, we need people to heal so that we can have a whole society. So this is the question that Paul just asked. Paul said, is there a way to show our children how to process in a healthy manner? I think you answered that in a way, but go ahead. Well,
it's to process with them. It's to be vulnerable with your children as well. I mean, they don't need to know every minute detail of how you got to this point, but they do. Children can handle certain information, developmentally appropriate information. You can talk to them about being hurt. Like I remember a particular time when my dad was feeling hurt. And it was during a funeral. There was a whole bunch of stuff going on. Anyway, I remember him saying, "This really hurts me." Like it hurt, and his words were, "It hurts me to my core." And I was thinking, my dad in my eyes was the strongest, biggest person in the world. Like he could do no wrong, right? And he was hurting. And I saw how my mother comforted him through that. But the fact that he said he was hurt to his core by that, I was like, so even this big, strong man can be hurt. And I saw him get to the other side. I don't know all the minute details of how that happened, but he was vulnerable to us at that moment. And it let me know that men should be vulnerable. They can be and still be strong protectors. Like it did not in any way make me think of him any less or as weak or anything. Like it made me actually think, okay, this is how people are supposed to be.
Yeah. Yeah, because you just answered it, but Paul, I think you need to recognize that you actually answered your own question within your question. Is there any way to? But the answer is show your children how to process by you actually doing your own work in front of them in some ways. Like you said, age appropriate. If we see it, we mimic it. And that's what Dr. Ayanay just shared with you. She just shared with you how once you show it and you do it, and you can show your children how to do it, then they will become that very thing that you showed them how to do. That's what it is. Children see it and they will mimic it without even recognizing later. I have children, Dr. Ayanay, who contact me even now from my first peer groups, 13 years ago? They are now college, high school, graduate. Several of them just graduated high school and some are in college, but they were contacting me to say, thank you so much for teaching me how to heal, teaching me what it looks like and the process by which I'm supposed to do that. I didn't know I would need these tools. That's why we teach you.
Yes.
We're teaching you because they have trauma at 8, 9, and 10 because of divorce, because of separation, because of breakups. And we are teaching them in these community centers how to navigate that as children. And now they're going into college and recognizing, oh my God, this is what Dr. Tori was teaching me way back then. And it's a beautiful thing to do, to be able to have kids say that and be able to do that. And that's what you get to do as parents. So Dr. Ayanay, tell us people how they can contact you. How do they get in touch with you for services? What's your social media, that kind of stuff?
So I am at Positively Intimate on Instagram. I am A.M. Ferguson Psychological Group, LLC on Facebook. And I think if you put in at Ayanay Ferguson, PhD in Facebook, that'll take you to my Facebook page. And all of my contact information is available on both of those.
Okay.
And my website, it's under construction, but you can contact me through my website, which is fergusonpsych.com, FergusonPsych.com.
Okay. I'll put this all in here. Make sure I did that right. Oh.
Yeah, on my web
CH, there it is. I got it wrong. Go ahead.
On my website, there's a form you fill out and it sends me an email. It's under construction, but you can still get in touch with me.
I'm going to put this on. He said, don't have the standpoint of do as I say and not as I do. That's true. Focus on doing the next right thing. Integrity is caught and taught.
Yes.
That's powerful.
Exactly.
Integrity is caught and taught. Yeah, we don't have that. We don't have the luxury of that anymore. Children are, these are different generations. You can see it in everything, and they are not standing for that. And it is definitely a place where we have to teach children who they need to be by being the people that we're supposed to be and overcoming and healing the trauma that we had so that they don't have to.
Exactly.
Dr. Ayanay Ferguson, thank you so much for coming on tonight. I'm gonna hopefully try to bring her back I'm gonna let her talk about what she wants to talk about, and I'm gonna step back and not ask any questions. So hopefully I can bring her back to do that. You guys watch, share, replay. We want to get the numbers so she gonna come back, and I'm not gonna bring her back if y'all ain't gonna watch this. But Dr. Ayanay Ferguson, thank you so much for coming on tonight.
Thanks for having me.
It was truly eye-opening. You said some things that I thought and felt, and I know from the hearts that I was seeing at moments when you were talking, people were connecting with what you were saying. And so I'm grateful. Thank you for coming on. And I'm praying that you guys will contact her, because dads, moms, singles, we need this conversation. Look, church girl, that's why who you suppressing all your good stuff. I need you to go find Dr. Ayanay so that you can be everything that you're called to be, and we can enjoy intimacy in sex. All right, you guys have a great night. I'm Dr. Tori J. Amazing organization, the Fatherless Generation Foundation. And tonight we just help connect you to some of your own pain. We connected the dots to some of your own pain. And I will see you next week for another session of Healing Tuesday. All right, talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.
Bye.